Lyra had married Tom 3 cycles ago, much to the confusion of her entire fleet command. The human was soft-spoken, physically weak by galactic standards, and seemed utterly unsuited for military life aboard the warship Crimson Dawn. He worked in the botanical gardens, tending to the food crops and medicinal plants with gentle hands and infinite patience. Her fellow warriors thought she had lost her mind. Lyra was a decorated combat officer of the Valen Empire, standing 7 feet tall with natural armor plating and 4 arms capable of crushing steel. Tom was 5'9", had no armor, no claws, and possessed exactly 2 fragile arms. He smiled often, spoke quietly, and never raised his voice, even when the other crew members mocked him behind his back. "Your mate cannot even lift a standard rifle," Commander Breck had said during one particularly harsh training session. "What use is he when raiders come?" Lyra had simply smiled and said nothing. Tom had overheard the comment and merely squeezed her primary hand, whispering that he understood their concern. He bore no grudge, showed no anger, and returned to his plants as if nothing had happened. The attack came on a Tuesday. By Earth reckoning, the Crimson Dawn had been conducting routine patrol near the outer colonies when 3 Marauder-class vessels dropped out of hyperspace. The ship-wide alarm shrieked through every corridor. Lyra was in the command center within seconds, her blood already hot for battle. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency, charging weapons and raising shields. The Marauders were notorious. They took no prisoners, left no survivors, and sold entire ships for scrap after executing the crews. They had wiped out 17 colony worlds in the past year alone. Each vessel carried 200 warriors, all of them trained killers who lived for carnage. "All civilians to the safe rooms," Lyra commanded. "Seal bulkheads Alpha through Gamma." She thought of Tom in the gardens and felt a moment of worry. He would be heading to the reinforced shelter with the other non-combatants. He would be safe there, protected behind 3 feet of reinforced durasteel while her warriors held the line. The first boarding pods hit the hull like meteors. Marauders poured into the ship through 6 breach points. They came with plasma rifles, vibroblades, and the kind of savage joy that made them the terror of civilized space. Lyra led her forces to meet them, her 4 arms wielding weapons with deadly precision. The corridors ran with blood as warriors from both sides fell, but there were too many. For every marauder they killed, 2 more seemed to take their place. They were being pushed back, section by section, toward the ship's core. Lyra fought with everything she had, but the mathematics were brutal. They were outnumbered 4 to 1. "Commander, they have breached Section 7, her tactical officer reported, voice tight with fear. "That is where the safe rooms are located." Lyra's heart stopped. Tom was in Section 7. She tried to push through, tried to fight her way back to him, but the Marauders formed a wall of bodies and weapons. She screamed his name into her communicator, begging him to respond, to tell her he was still safe behind those sealed doors. Only static answered. The Marauders reached the safe room doors and began cutting through with plasma torches. The non-combatants inside had no weapons, no armor, no chance. They were scientists, engineers, farmers, and healers. Gentle people who had never raised a hand in violence. The doors fell inward with a crash. 12 Marauders rushed into the safe room, weapons ready, already laughing about the easy kills they would claim. They found 32 terrified civilians backed against the far wall, and 1 human standing between them and their prey. Tom stood alone in the center of the room, still wearing his botanical garden jumpsuit. His hands hung empty at his sides. His face bore that same gentle expression he always wore, but his eyes had changed. Something old and terrible looked out from behind them now. "Please leave," Tom said quietly. "You do not want to do this." The marauders laughed. Their leader, a massive creature with 6 arms and scales like tank armor, stepped forward. He raised his rifle toward Tom's chest. Tom moved. No one watching the security footage later could quite explain what happened next. The human became a blur of motion that physics should not have allowed. His hand caught the rifle barrel and crushed it like paper. His other hand struck the marauder's throat with such force that the creature's head separated from its body before anyone could blink. The remaining 11 marauders opened fire. Plasma bolts filled the air where Tom had been standing, but he was no longer there. He was among them now, moving through their ranks like death itself. He used no weapons. He needed none. His hands broke necks, shattered skulls, and tore through armor that was rated to stop anti-tank rounds. One marauder tried to flee. Tom caught him by the ankle and used him as a club to break 3 others. Another attempted to surrender. Tom showed him the same mercy the marauders had shown 17 colony worlds, which was to say, none at all. It took 17 seconds. When the violence ended, 12 marauders lay dead, and Tom stood among their bodies, not even breathing hard. He turned to the terrified civilians behind him, and his face softened back into that familiar, gentle expression. "Everyone, please stay here," he said kindly. "I need to go help Lyra now." He stepped over the bodies and walked into the corridor. The security system tracked his progress through the ship. He moved through sections where fighting still raged, but he did not join the battle. He simply walked toward the heaviest concentration of marauders, and when they saw him coming, something in their predator brains recognized a more dangerous predator. They shot him. Plasma bolts hit him square in the chest, the shoulder, the leg. Tom staggered, went down on one knee, and then stood back up. His jumpsuit was burned and torn, showing angry red wounds beneath. But he kept walking forward. The marauders began to retreat. These warriors who had destroyed colony worlds and slaughtered entire fleets were backing away from one wounded human who refused to stop coming. They fired until their weapons ran dry, and still he advanced. When Tom reached them, the slaughter was absolute. He went through them like a storm, like a force of nature, like something that had crawled up from humanity's violent past and would not be satisfied until every threat to his home was eliminated. The marauders broke. These creatures who had never retreated, who had never shown fear, ran screaming from a single human. But Tom did not let them run far. Lyra found him an hour later, sitting on the floor of Deck 5, surrounded by bodies. His hands were covered in blood that was not his own. He looked up when she approached, and she saw tears streaming down his face. "I am sorry you had to see this," he said quietly. "I know what your people think of me. I know they believe humans are weak and gentle. And we are, mostly. We want to be. But we come from a world that tried very hard to kill us for millions of years. We are persistence hunters, endurance killers. We evolved to chase prey until it died of exhaustion, to outlast anything that tried to harm our tribe. When something threatens our home, our family, we become what we had to be to survive." He looked down at his bloody hands. "I did not want you to know that I could do this. I wanted to just grow plants and be the soft, kind husband you deserved. But they were going to hurt you. They were going to hurt all of you. And I could not let that happen." Lyra knelt beside him and wrapped all 4 arms around his small frame. She held him while he cried, this gentle man who had just killed 47 marauders with his bare hands to protect strangers and aliens he called family. The marauder ships fled. Word spread through the criminal fleets about the human, about the gentle gardener who had become death incarnate when his people were threatened. The Crimson Dawn became known as the ship you did not attack, not because of its weapons or its warriors, but because of the soft-spoken man who tended its gardens. Tom went back to his plants the next day. He smiled at crew members who passed, spoke kindly to everyone, and never raised his voice. But now when other warriors saw him, they nodded with respect. They understood at last what Lyra had known all along. Humans were gentle because they chose to be, not because they had to be. And that choice, that deliberate kindness in a creature capable of such violence, was the most terrifying thing in the galaxy.